The stars twinkled in the sky above him, peaceful, calm, with no inkling whatsoever of what was about to take place. The doctor sighed. He took a deep breath, calming himself in preparation for what must come next. The TARDIS was safely parked about half a mile away, Charley still asleep inside. He knew she would be upset if she knew that she had been left out of something this critical, especially after their conversation earlier that day. But he had no intention of letting her put herself at risk. He was sure she would forgive him, if he happened to survive, but he could not take the chance this time. Not with what he was about to attempt.
She'll forgive me. And even if she doesn't, she's better off not being here for this. Frankly, I'd be better off not being here for this. Why do I have to do this? Why can't there be some big space fleet types with fancy space jackets who deal with this space stuff? But no, it's always me, the strange man in the blue box. I don't even have a uniform. Just a admittedly snazzy scarf.
He sobered quickly. Much as he complained, he knew he would rather be here than not. He knew he would rather be the one in the firing line than letting others be at risk.
It really is a snazzy scarf. Thanks again, Charley.
He forgot his complaint now and returned to his work. Next to him was a small box, or it had been a small box many centuries ago before he had added a variety of widgets, gadgets, apps, and a small picture of a cat hanging on a pole with the caption, "Hang in there, buddy." He was particularly proud of this last item.
Right. I have to adjust the angle another 8 degrees this time, judging by the approach vector.
And so, he waited, adjusting the angle of the device in preparation for what was coming next. What's that? What was he waiting for? Oh, yes, I suppose that is a question one should consider. But you know the Doctor, how can you not? You have come here, have you not? You have come to this place to hear of him, to hear what he has done, what he is doing. To him, this moment is and was a moment of dread and uncertainty. He was terrified. What if, this time, he failed? What if, this time, he let everyone down? But all this is to you is content. You laugh, clap, cheer, leave comments, as though this Doctor and his travails are some sort of circus for you to gawk at. Still, not for me to pass judgment. The moment of dread and uncertainty in question was a cosmic event. Every few millennia, a sun in a distant star system inverted. The Doctor could recall his words to Charley earlier that day.
This star is only 2/3 the size of your sun, but the inversion is a unique cosmic event. It happens every few millennia. Beautiful, but the shockwave of energy it unleashes when it inverts is, and quite frankly, is capable of annihilating everything in a 10 light-year radius?
I've never heard of anything like that. Stars inverting isn't something that exists, is it?
My dear girl, do I need to remind you? TARDIS? Time travel? Dimensionally transcendental?
Alright, fine. But how is that possible? How could it have happened?
There I must admit, I'm a tad stumped. It could be as simple as a naturally occurring event that I'm not familiar with, or as complex as some sort of technology run amok.
Well, what technology could invert a star? And why would anyone want to?
But despite her bafflement and worry, the doctor had only smiled.
Maybe they meant as a power source. More as a weapon? Maybe they were highly advanced entities. Perhaps it was a sort of fun light show and they never truly considered the consequences. Oh well, there's no way to know now.
This was not the entire truth. You, listening to this, will come to recognize this as a common feature of the Doctor's explanations, if you have not already. The Doctor left out anything he considered either concerning information or not pertinent for the situation. For example, he had failed to tell her that local civilizations had known about the inversion event since the dawn of their Stone Ages, nor had he mentioned the somewhat ominous name they knew it by: the Fires of Perdition. He had failed to tell her that he had seen the inversion before, stopped it each time, and each time it was changing, getting harder to stop. He had also entirely failed to mention that there was a significant risk that he would fail this time, and if he did, he would be utterly obliterated by the event. Charley, loyal and astute companion as she was, had known only that he would try to prevent the inversion from destroying these various star systems. She had worried about his efforts, but he, always 10 steps ahead, had already had a plan, and assured her of this. That his plan was reckless, he had omitted explaining to her. That his plan risked his death, he'd also failed to elaborate on. This much was within his character. He was not very good at elaborating on things when his life was at risk. He did not want others to worry. Was that a failing? Perhaps. But it was a failing that he could perhaps be forgiven for. He did not want others to pay for his mistakes again. In his many lifetimes, too many had paid for his errors in judgment, or his inability to act fast enough with their own pain or death. He would not risk Charley suffering the same fate. And so he was, alone, faced with a shockwave that could potentially obliterate this planet if his clever technology did not find a way to redirect it. He was, despite the risks, fairly confident in its ability to do so. After all, he was a genius. This was no longer merely the boast of youthful ego, but a statement of pure fact. But the name, Fires of Perdition, poetic as it was no misnomer. If it struck this planet, it would be a most fiery end.
Which is why it won't strike this planet. If I've got my sums right.
This last addition was somewhat superfluous. He had come here before, stopped the inversions before. He knew his maths weren't off. He suppressed the doubt, the fear, the uncertainty. In this moment, he was not merely a Time Lord who had fled his people. In this moment, he was not merely a fool or an idiot. In this moment, he was the Doctor, and fear had no sway over him. He was a legend. He was a hero. He would not fail. Not today. There were now scant moments before the inversion happened. Putting his sunglasses on, the Doctor stared up at the sky and waited.
Well, if this doesn't work, at least I'm going out with an absolute bang.
A few moments passed before he could see the shockwave. It was little more than a glimmer in the sky at this point. The actual light from the shockwave would not reach this planet until long after everything was said and done. He let out a sigh, before turning back to his machine and pressing a final few buttons. The machine whirred, as though warming up, and he turned to look back at the shockwave, taking a deep, calming breath.
Here we go.
I fear, dear listener, there is no way to make the following sound in any way more impressive than it truly was. The small machine next to the doctor whirred louder. There was a sudden flash of light, and then a small bolt of energy, bright green and friendly, shot into the sky, towards the general direction of the twinkling star. There would be a nail-biting 4 minutes to wait before he would know if his sums were off. To pass the time, he pulled a book from his pocket, knitting for time tops, but he found himself so distracted by a sudden flutter of nerves that he got confused between a knit and a purl.
What if this fails?
The thought should not have held purchase within his brain, and yet it did. A strange serenity settled over him at the thought of dying here.
The TARDIS will take Charley home. That's something. And we're dying here, trying to save planets, alone but tranquil and at peace. Really be so bad?
He closed his eyes, just for a moment, and imagined the instant of searing agony that dying to the fires of perdition would cause. Somehow, that made his serenity greater. A single instant of pain, hardly the worst thing he would ever experience. And then, boom, gone. Done. A moment passed, and suddenly there was a flash of light above him. He looked up, closing his book and taking a deep breath.
Moment of truth.
The flash came again, and then a moment later it was gone. From a small hidden compartment he had built into the side of the machine, there came a little green flag and a shower of confetti. He let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding.
Well, guess I'm not getting incinerated today after all.
It was hard to say if he felt disappointed about that. It would first require him to admit to himself that he did, in fact, want to be incinerated on some level, and as much as his inevitable death was something he had considered again, and again, and again, it was not something he would admit to anticipating. He dismissed the thoughts after a moment. His work here was done, and that was the important thing. With a sigh, he turned to leave, already wondering where he would take Charley to take his mind off of everything.
I do keep missing Florana. Maybe I'll get there this time. Would make a nice change.